And we're back, and now to discuss further the incident and this attempted assassination of Prime Minister Robert Fico in Slovakia. We're now going to talk with our next guest. Delighted to welcome to the studio Wojciech Przybylski, Visegrad Insight and Foundation Res Publica, Editor-in-Chief. So thank you so much for coming to the program.
Thank you for inviting me. Hello.
Now, I mean, this is just happened in the last hour or so. What is your initial reaction to this?
Well, I'm shocked. This should never happen. Should never happen because there are security services around any prime minister. This should never happen because in no society this should be ever allowed. And well, it is happening in a very particular political context in Slovakia and in Europe of today. So I think it's rightly so attracting a lot of attention.
Mm-hmm. And I think we were going to actually share some of those reactions. We have eyewitness reports. We have various reactions from different leaders from across Europe. I think it's going to be right now the main focus point. Let's also, I think, go into one of the first sound bites here, one of the many leaders here. Let's show here, I believe, an eyewitness who was there at this attempted assassination close to the capital, Bratislava. Let's share that now with our viewers.
It's a shame the police didn't check all of us standing there since 10 a.m. We could have shown them our empty hands. We went to shake Mr. Fico's hand. I was taking pictures of him when he walked out of the building. We had been waiting for a long time. We were excited. We wanted to shake his hand. And at that moment, we heard something that sounded like a firecracker. We thought that someone had pulled a prank and thrown a firecracker. That was my first reaction. I heard 3 rapid shots, one after the other, like firecrackers. I saw a wound on his head, and then he fell next to the barrier. It feels like a nightmare I can't wake up from. Things like this just don't happen in Slovakia.
Well, that would suggest that there were some definite loops in that security setup, that security detail.
But I think also this is the point, because as you alluded to as well earlier, and some of the other guests as we've covered this in the last hour, I mean, political differences is one thing, right? But then to actually have this, I mean, we know very little about the culprit. We know that he's been apprehended. What do you think this is now going to have an impact on, potentially politically, not just in Slovakia with the government there, but beyond that? I mean, it is a European election year. I mean, Mr. Fico himself carried certain views that potentially had its opponents and enemies, but how is this going to ripple effect?
Supporters.
Exactly, yeah. What are the ripple effects in your mind for the region from this?
I'll begin with a bit of a background, which is really important to say that it's not the first killing of political ramification also in Slovakia. 2 years ago, we had 2 people gunned down in front of LGBT bar in the middle of town of Bratislava, capital of the country, by a troubled individual, son of a radical politician. And those 2 victims have been generating bipartisan momentum against such violence. Earlier in this century, much earlier, before the previous term, there was an assassination by mafia of Jan Kuciak, investigative journalist, who investigated mafia connections with politicians involving Mr. Fico. But the killing itself had political ramifications, and it was a moment of change eventually for Slovakia. It was a catalyst of discontent by Slovaks who wanted a change in power. And I think the situation here today is also equally volatile. Mr. Fico was not the most potent, he was not the most popular politician. He won his elections. His candidate won presidential elections. He's a president-elect, Mr. Pellegrini, former Prime Minister of Slovakia from several years ago. And we don't know what this incident, what this will be, but it's a very political, very powerful political symbol that will instill in Slovaks a sense of urgency to act and to do. We don't know yet what, but definitely it will be consequential for the public life in this country. And it is, from what we see in reactions from all over Europe, it is going to have it is going to be a focal point for many other leaders in Europe.
Well, speaking of leaders and reactions, we have lots of them flooding in now. Perhaps we can have a look at some of those that have appeared on X. Can we get some of those tweets, please?
Well, there we go. Prime Minister Donald Tusk there. Shocking news from Slovakia. Robert, my thoughts are with you in this very difficult moment. Now, again, here's someone politically different, but again, obviously, this is such an assault on democracy, I think, and we've seen that so much. And let's go to our next tweet now. And let's see the reaction. So this is from Radosław Sikorski, a Polish foreign minister. I'm shocked by the news regarding the assassination attempt on Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico. I hope that the Prime Minister will recover soon and that the incident will be thoroughly investigated. Now, this is all very raw right now. And of course, the first initial reaction is shock. But at the same time, I mean, this reminds me, I mean, this is far away. This was in Brazil in 2018. Jair Bolsonaro, also a stabbing. It ended up being someone completely out of his mind, a madman. It was never really made sure where he came from. So, but nevertheless, the impact of this, Robert Fico had his enemies. Robert Fico internally, as you said earlier, also externally. Can we talk to that a little bit? Give us a bit of context of Robert Fico, also his political career and some of those elements in all this.
Robert Fico comes from Social Democratic Party of Slovakia, which is essentially post-communist party. It has been known for being not shying away from corruption schemes and some ties to mafia, to which I made the connection with the killing of Jan Kuciak, the investigative journalist, a few years back. And he was out of power also because his state capture that he performed in a light form has not been accepted several years ago by the Slovak population. With his return, we have seen a fast-forward state capture. So all of these attempts to extract capital, extract resource from the state, control state apparatus for partisan or even personal gains has sped up under his watch in the past several months, and the worries were that they will only accelerate in the coming months once he has secured that his candidate for the president has won over the opponent from the more progressive liberal side of the political spectrum. So Robert Fico has been already in a spotlight for his authoritarian grip on Slovakia, something that many across Europe, but particularly in Slovakia, protested against. We have seen also protests upcoming for this afternoon against the state capture of the media, public media, and the partisanship that would enter into the media to make it essentially a partisan a tube of propaganda against the opposition. And that is something to be mindful of. We'll see what the result of the incident is, and wishing him all good health.
But
we have to remember that there will be possible escalation.
But I just wanted to ask, because you mentioned all these things which are obviously very relevant, but in light of the upcoming European parliamentary elections and just the general mood that we see across Europe, is there a chance that perhaps Fico is just a little bit inconvenient to the left, shall we say, because he's just perhaps not in line with the wider popular values and perhaps opinions? He's Eurosceptic, he holds on to perhaps more conservative values. He doesn't necessarily support sending more weapons and support to Ukraine. He's just a little bit of an obstacle, he's just in the way a little bit.
Well, I wouldn't suggest that so much as international European politics. Mr. Fico has been playing along as long, and these were his words, as long as the European Union would not touch his money. So he's been extremely pragmatic. He has been difficult, of course, in terms of playing unified front, but he's been also very clear that all he cares is the power grip on his country, with the benefits and financial benefits that would continue to flow to Slovakia without any conditionality on the rule of law, and etc. And then he would not be a real obstacle like Mr. Orban has been in the past when it comes to support for Ukraine. He's been vocal and verbal in this support, and it's troubling already in the age of disinformation, but he has not been acting as a hard opponent, someone who would veto certain decisions. And through Slovakia, we have seen private companies operating in Slovakia supporting Ukraine with the production necessary for them.
But I think also what you just mentioned there as well, and we've covered this many times, is that disinformation, right? This is now also a component of everything that is going on with this hybrid warfare of Russia. And I think this has been concerning in particular. We've seen that very much in Slovakia over this, not just this past presidential election, but also during Fico's campaign as well. And this goes over several months, potentially years. If we're looking at that as an element here, how concerned are you to have this play out now as this investigation will go forward, as the media will talk about it, as the people will talk about it? How much is the disinformation campaign now going to be an obstacle here?
Well, look, enemies of Europe, enemies of united Europe will use it to their advantage. And they will sue, they will amplify divisions within European societies, they will amplify the radical forces, they will speak to the radical emotions that are quite natural in this moment. And we have been warned by a number of intelligence services. There were breaking news over a week ago from intelligence services warning of Russia, coordinated attempts to destabilize Europe ahead of elections. We may allude, we may seek what sort of events these were, but everybody's on alert in a way. Being on alert, however, is not helping to address the real need for determination in the society for voting the right way, the good way, according to their best judgments, rather than being instilled by a sense of emotional appeal that can trigger people to take steps they would later regret. And also into suing the division inside Europe and across societies, which is the long-term objective.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a moment now to see President of Slovakia, Zuzana Čaputová, has commented on the news of the shooting of Prime Minister Robert Fico. She said that it was an attack on democracy and urged people not to rush to judgment. Let's take a look.
I am shocked. We are all shocked by the terrible and malicious attack on Prime Minister Robert Fico. Something serious has happened that we can't even realize yet. A physical attack on the Prime Minister is primarily an attack on a person, but it is also an attack on democracy. Any violence is unacceptable. The hateful rhetoric we witness in society leads to hateful acts. Please let's stop it. The police arrested the alleged perpetrator and will surely publish more information when possible. Until then, please don't make quick judgments and think about the most important thing. And that's the only thing at the moment, that Robert Fico recovers as quickly as possible.
Yeah, so they're still president of Slovakia, Ms. Čaputová, saying very much about urging calm, as we do know that this is a very, very recent situation. We don't have all the evidence laid out. But nevertheless, that reaction now, and the reaction in Slovakia, we've seen also, I think, several people come forward from different Slovakian ministries. I think the parliament even paused for a session there to show that unity. Now, I guess this is my next question. I mean, this is also now a chance of unity. We've already seen that support of democracy. How much will this, in which direction will it go potentially, unify Slovakia out of all of this?
Well, the chances for that in the long term are not very high. Again, Mr. Fico is a controversial figure in his political career, throughout his political career. And even an act of aggression, be it a madman, be it whatever other motive that is now investigated by the services, it will also be bringing different judgments from those who are polarized already. Slovakia is one of those countries that has had the highest trouble with disinformation, the highest rate of disinformation in social media. The previous government couldn't have coped with it effectively. The current government still has trouble with it. There's a lot of hoax, there's a lot of conspiracy theory, and I believe in Slovak society, even though the mainstream, the officials, will urge calm and unity, the effects sedimented deep in the provincial Slovakia, in many pockets of poverty or in many places which feel detached, and some people feel detached in those places, they will be responsive also to the streams of disinformation that is being sponsored elsewhere.
But is it actually going to evoke more support for the conservative side, this event?
Oh, it may play different sides. I mean, it will definitely polarize the public opinion. It will have an effect of people feeling insecure. How many more killings in a country of a high-profile individuals can you take and think everything's normal? So a sense of insecurity must be there naturally, and unfortunately the way the government of Robert Fico has been performing has not set grounds for this calm reaction. President Čaputová is an outgoing president, and I only do hope that next president, President-elect Pellegrini, will continue in this statesmanhood in his role when he assumes office. But president is not the most important element of the politics in Slovakia, and the government is composed of many people who are keen on using brute force in police against to remove people from offices where they should rather build confidence and authority of the offices. So there is a lot of this very basic power game that has not set grounds for what you're speculating about, which is this general sense of solidarity in the society.
Well, we'll see. It'll be critical days ahead, but we're just getting more information. Let's get the reaction now of Ms. von der Leyen, the Commission President there. Some tweets now. Let's read those out. I strongly condemn the vile attack on Prime Minister Robert Fico. Such acts of violence have no place in our society and undermine democracy, our most precious common good. My thoughts are with Prime Minister Fico and his family. And I believe also we have the comments of Prime Minister Rishi Sunak as well. Shocked to hear this awful news. All our thoughts are with Prime Minister Fico and his family. And from the region, from neighboring Czechia, Piotr Fala as well, I believe, on this next tweet. And this is being translated. So the news about the shooting of Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico is shocking. I wish the Prime Minister to get well as soon as possible. We must not tolerate violence. It must have no place in our society. So far, condemning this on the highest order from all levels of different leaders across Europe. So I think that is the first and primary response.
Indeed. And just one last question before we wrap up. What do you think are the political consequences of this attempted assassination?
Well, for sure, the attention is on Robert Fico, his party. We will see a lot of more attention internationally in looking at Slovakia and Slovak democracy. In terms of popularity of politicians, too early to predict.
Yeah, indeed. And again, shocking news as well. But really, thank you so much for putting all these layers of context on it. Really appreciate your time. Wojciech Przybylski there, Visegrad Insight and Respublika Foundation. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.